This is an audio-only horror story. I want you to close your eyes in. 3, 2, 1, 0. Use your imagination as you listen, and use your imagination to invoke a scene. Enjoy the ride.
I'm not entirely sure why I agreed to go to the Galleria Mall that night. Maybe it was the way Sam's eyes gleamed with the promise of adventure, or how Julie's laugh echoed with mischief. Or perhaps it was just the fact that, after everything that had happened that year, I was desperate for a distraction. Whatever the reason, I found myself in Sam's old, beaten-up car on a chilly Friday night, driving toward a place I'd only ever seen from the highway. The Galleria Mall had been shut down for over a decade, some say because of a sinkhole, others whispered about the unexplained disappearances of a few workers. The official story was bankruptcy, but there were plenty of rumors that painted a different, darker picture. "So what's the plan, Sam?" I asked from the back seat, pulling my jacket tighter around me. The air in the car was filled with anticipation and the faint scent of cheap cologne. "We're just gonna check it out, take some pics, maybe explore the food court," Sam said, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "Don't tell me you're scared, bro." I wasn't scared. Not exactly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were crossing a line, one that shouldn't be crossed. Next to me, Julie was fiddling with her flashlight, making it strobe for a second before setting it back to a steady beam. "Gonna live stream this," she said, winking. "My followers love this creepy shit." In the passenger seat, Marcus just grinned. He was the quiet one, always content to follow along with whatever crazy plan Sam cooked up. He didn't say much, but his eyes never missed a thing. I think that's why I liked him so much. He was the observer in a group full of loudmouths, including me. We finally arrived at the mall, its outline a massive, shadowy hulk against the night sky. The place was huge, once the pride of the city, but now it was a monument to failure, rotting quietly on the outskirts of town. The parking lot was cracked and overgrown, the faded lines barely visible under layers of dirt and neglect. Sam killed the engine, and the sudden silence was almost deafening. We all stepped out, our breath visible in the cool night air. "There it is, Galleria Mall," Sam said, spreading his arms as if he were presenting some grand prize. "Still looks the same, huh?" Julie rolled her eyes. "Same as it ever was. Crappy." I couldn't help but feel uneasy as we approached the entrance. The once automatic doors were boarded up, but someone had pried them open just enough for a person to squeeze through. I stared at the jagged wood and rusted nails, and for a brief moment, I thought about turning back. But Sam was already halfway inside, Marcus right behind him, and Julie was filming everything, giving a running commentary to her phone. So I took a deep breath and followed them into the darkness. The first thing that hit me was the smell, a mixture of damp, mold, and something metallic. The air was stale, thick with the scent of decay. My flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing bits of broken glass and debris scattered across the floor. We were standing in what used to be the main lobby. The ceiling stretched up high above us, adorned with dangling remnants of banners and broken lights. Dust motes danced in our flashlight beams, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere, like we were in some kind of purgatory. "Creepy as hell," Marcus muttered, his voice barely audible. We walked further in, our footsteps echoing eerily. The place was a maze of half-closed stores and empty kiosks, their once bright colors now faded and peeled away. Some stores still had mannequins inside, frozen in time, their faceless heads turned toward us as if they were watching. Sam was in his element, bouncing from one area to the next, calling out the names of stores that had long since vanished. "Remember this place? They had the best pizza, and this was the arcade. God, I spent so many quarters here." I remembered too. Galleria Mall had been our hangout spot when we were kids. We'd waste entire afternoons here, wandering from store to store, trying to act like we were older than we were. But now, it was just a shell, stripped of its vibrancy and left to rot. Julie's flashlight flickered over an old directory sign, the kind that used to light up with all the store names and locations. Now, it was just a cracked screen with missing letters, the words barely legible. "Food court's this way," Sam announced, pointing down a dark corridor. It was the only place with any natural light left, thanks to a massive skylight that hadn't completely caved in. We followed him, the atmosphere growing more oppressive with every step. I kept catching glimpses of shadows in the corners of my eyes, but every time I turned, there was nothing, just empty space and the quiet hum of silence. We reached the food court, a vast open area filled with overturned tables and broken chairs. The skylight above was stained with grime, letting in just enough moonlight to make everything look ghostly and surreal. "Damn," Marcus said, his voice tinged with awe. "This place really went to shit." Sam laughed. "What did you expect? It's been closed for years. Hey, let's check out the kitchens. Bet they're full of rats." We split up to explore, the darkness swallowing us as soon as we moved away from the skylight's limited glow. I found myself wandering near an old Chinese food counter, its once bright red sign now dull and barely hanging on. There was an eerie stillness to the place, as if it were frozen in time, waiting for customers who would never come. That's when I heard it, a faint, barely audible noise. It was soft, like a whisper, but it was definitely there. I turned, sweeping my flashlight over the counters and chairs, but saw nothing, just emptiness. Did you guys hear that? Julie was filming everything, moving her phone in slow pans as if she were making a documentary. "All right, guys, this is where it gets spooky," she said, grinning at the camera. "Bet we see a ghost or something." "Stop jinxing us," I muttered, but she just laughed. I was near the old pizza place when I saw it. There was a mannequin standing in the middle of the hallway, a relic from one of the old clothing stores. It was positioned awkwardly, with one arm outstretched and its head tilted as if it were in mid-conversation. The strange thing was, I could have sworn it wasn't there a minute ago. "Guys, check this out," I called out, my voice shaking slightly. Sam jogged over, followed by the others. "Oh, that's creepy as hell. How did it get here?" Julie raised an eyebrow. "Probably just someone messing with us. There's gotta be other people here. Urban explorers, maybe?" But I wasn't convinced. The mannequin was positioned too perfectly, too deliberately. I walked around it, examining the cracks in its plastic skin and the worn fabric of its outdated clothes. There were scratches on its arms, almost like claw marks, and its face was blank, featureless. "That's some Silent Hill shit," Marcus said, shivering. Sam laughed, but it sounded forced. "Yeah, no big deal. Just a creepy mannequin. Come on, let's keep moving." But as we turned to leave, I could have sworn I saw its head twitch. Just a tiny movement, barely noticeable, but enough to send a jolt of terror through me. I told myself it was just my imagination, but the uneasy feeling wouldn't go away. We continued exploring, but the atmosphere had shifted. The once curious excitement was now tainted with a creeping dread. Every shadow seemed to watch us. Every sound felt amplified in the eerie silence of the mall. I kept glancing back, half expecting to see the mannequin following us. But it stayed where it was, frozen and unblinking. We eventually made our way to the lower levels, descending a crumbling staircase that led to the basement. It was pitch black down there, and the temperature seemed to drop even more. The walls were damp, streaked with something dark that could have been mold or something else. The basement was vast, filled with forgotten storage rooms and maintenance corridors. Pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping occasionally, and the smell was almost unbearable, a mix of rot and rust. "God, this place is a maze," Julie muttered, her voice echoing faintly. "Are we even supposed to be down here?" "Who cares?" Sam said, but I could hear the nervousness creeping into his voice. It's all part of the adventure. But it didn't feel like an adventure anymore. It felt like we were trespassing on something far more sinister. I kept expecting to see rats scurrying in the corners, but the basement was unnervingly quiet. Too quiet. We stumbled upon what looked like an old maintenance office, its door slightly ajar. Inside were dusty file cabinets, a broken chair, and a flickering fluorescent light that buzzed incessantly. Marcus walked over to the cabinets, pulling one open. "Look at this, old blueprints of the mall." We gathered around, looking at the faded papers. The blueprints detailed every level, every store, but there was one section that caught my eye. A part of the basement that was marked off with a red X and labeled, "Do not enter." "What's that?" Julie asked, pointing to the marked area. Sam squinted at it. Probably where they stored the hazardous materials or something. Want to check it out? I hesitated, but the others were already heading for the door. I followed, my stomach twisting with unease. The corridor that led to the restricted area was narrow and claustrophobic, with rusted pipes running along the walls and puddles of stagnant water on the floor. The sound of our footsteps echoed unnervingly, bouncing off the walls in distorted reverberations. When we reached the door, it was locked with a heavy chain. The sign next to it was faded, but I could make out the words, "Authorized personnel only." Sam pulled at the chain, testing its strength. "It's locked tight. We should probably leave this one alone." But Julie was already digging through her bag, pulling out a small set of lock-picking tools. She was the one with all the weird hobbies, always learning new tricks for her channel. "Step aside, amateurs," she said, grinning. "I got this." It took her a few minutes, but eventually, the chain fell away with a clatter. The door swung open, revealing a set of stairs leading down into darkness. The air was even colder here, almost biting, and I felt a chill run down my spine. We descended the stairs, our flashlights struggling to cut through the thick gloom. The space at the bottom was unlike anything else in the mall. It was a large, circular room with walls lined with strange geometric patterns. There were no signs of what the room had been. We didn't talk much after that. Julie ended up deleting most of the footage she'd taken, claiming it was too dark and shaky to be worth posting. Sam joked about the whole thing, trying to brush it off like it was no big deal, but I could tell it had shaken him. Marcus stopped coming around as much, and when we did see each other, it was like there was a silent understanding between us, an unspoken agreement to never mention that night again. But the memories didn't fade. I'd find myself thinking about that basement, those strange symbols, and the mannequins that seemed to move on their own. I started having nightmares, vivid and terrifying. In them, I was always back in that circular room, surrounded by shadows that whispered things I couldn't understand. One night, I woke up in a cold sweat, convinced that there was something in my room. I turned on the light, my heart racing, and saw nothing, but the feeling lingered, that suffocating sense of being watched. I haven't been back to Galleria Mall since. None of us have. But sometimes when I'm driving by on the highway, I can't help but glance in its direction. The place looks just as abandoned as ever, but I know better. I know that somewhere inside, those mannequins are still standing, waiting in the darkness. And I can't help but wonder, what else is waiting with them?
As the final echoes of the tale fade into the darkness, remember this: in the shadows where fear takes root, the true horror lies not in the creatures that lurk, but in the darkness within ourselves. We tell these stories not just to scare or entertain, but to confront the fears that we try so hard to ignore. So as you step back into the light of the real world, carry with you the lessons of the night. The monsters we create are reflections of our deepest anxieties, and the strength to overcome them is within each of us. Sleep well, and remember, in the realm of fear, we are the true masters of our fate. Good night, and may your dreams be free of shadows. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like, subscribe and click the notification bell for you to see my future update on this channel. Stay safe and always remember to lock your doors.